when an eyewitness gives a description of the suspect at the time of the crime, if you were wearing those garments, fit that description, you were at that location, at that time, guess what? You need an alibi, and most likely a lawyer. Perhaps you're familiar with Delphi, Indiana, and Abby and Libby's case where Richard Allen has been charged with their homicide. He met the description. Unless you're worried about height, then he's significantly shorter than the eyewitness account. However, he did say he was at that bridge that day. Being at the wrong place at the wrong time is bad enough, but if you also match what the suspect was wearing, you have a lot of explaining to do. Everything I share with you is creative expression and my own opinion. I invite you to do your own research and form your own opinion. This is a theory that has come along with me falling into a rabbit hole while I was reading Inspector Brett Payne's affidavit. Let me share with you. DM stated she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Colonel's room. DM then said she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." My initial feeling was that this is something that an EMT would say, or a person of rescue and service to the public, such as LE, a fireman, a medical personnel. As I continued to read Brett Payne's affidavit, he gave me a moment to pause. DM stated she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. LA does not believe in coincidences. If you were clad in black, if you were at that location at that time or around that time, there are some serious questions that need some answers. Immediately, all clad in black reminds me of 3:12 a.m. when LE is all clad in black just on the side of 1122 Queen Road driveway. First question is, why is LE all clad in black? Why are they not in uniform? It's 3:12 a.m. in the morning. What are they doing exactly? And why are they at the end of 1122 Queen Road driveway? That's very close to the time in question of these homicides. Is it coincidental that LE is outside the home clad completely in black and we have an eyewitness who's accounting the perpetrators all clad in black and offering service to help someone? Too bad when it comes to crime, there are no coincidences. There are only questions and answers. Unfortunately, all I have is questions. First report said that this was a targeted crime. Either the occupants or the residence was targeted. They also spoke of a military-type weapon, a K-bar knife, a sharp-edged blade that they were searching for. They reported that they believed that the crime took place between 3 and 4 a.m. I, like many of you, learned of the death of Brent Kopacka. May he rest in peace, and I thank him for his service. According to Brent's obituary, Brent proudly served in the U.S. Army from 2005 to 2009 in the 2nd Battalion, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 82nd Airborne Division. Brent was awarded the Purple Heart for his service in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. The manner of his death has never sat well with me. An anonymous call claiming that he was threatening his roommates, with everyone still very heightened and triggered by the death of the 4 individuals just a few miles away. Ellie showed up with a SWAT team and a search warrant, and the rest is history. With more questions than answers, I slid further down into the rabbit hole. Headlines also revealed lead investigator in Idaho murders is a U.S. Army vet with just 2 years of police experience as desperate FBI ads agents and families grow even more impatient. Officer Brett Payne joined the Moscow Police Department from the Army in 2020. Payne, 32, is now the lead investigator on the unsolved quadruple murder case. The article goes on to report DailyMail.com can reveal that before joining the Moscow Police Department, Payne served in the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan. I find it oh so peculiar that Officer Brett Payne goes from his award of the Champs Rookie of the Year in 2020 to the lead investigator in a quadruple homicide within less than 2 years. Brent Kopacka, the man with the Purple Heart that served his country, is taken out by SWAT under what to me is very suspicious circumstance. And they both served on the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan. My next question was, what kind of weapon would be standard issued for the 82nd Airborne Division? According to military.com, the M9 bayonet is a multi-purpose knife and bayonet officially adopted in 1984 by the U.S. Army. It has a 7-inch blade and is issued with a sheath designed to double as a wire cutter. The M9 multi-purpose bayonet system is used as a bayonet on the M16 series rifle, on the M4 series carbine, as a hand weapon, as a general field and utility knife, as well as a wire cutter together with its scabbard, and as a saw. According to Fox 5, the article read, the father of slain University of Idaho student Kaylee Goncalves told Fox Digital News that the victims had, quote, big open gouges that were clearly the work of a sadistic male and called police cowards for not sharing more with the public. Considering the alleged different types of wounds on these victims, and the versatility of this M9 bayonet, I wonder, it can even be used as a saw, as well as a knife, at the same time. As I drifted further down the rabbit hole, I began to wonder, what's the difference between a K-bar knife and an M9 Bowie knife? In comparison, the shape of both knife blades was eerily similar. Less than 3 weeks after the victims' homicides, ABC News on December 7th, 2022, released the article, Idaho Murders, Please Start Removing Victims' Belongings from House. Please hope returning items to families can, quote, help with some of their healing. The article goes on to read, as police in Moscow, Idaho begin to remove some of the victims' personal belongings from the house where 4 University of Idaho students were killed, they are now also looking to speak with the occupant or occupants of a white 2011-2013 Hyundai Elantra that was in the, quote, immediate area of the home the morning of the gruesome crimes. No suspects have been identified. 2 surviving roommates, who police said are not suspects, were home at the time and likely slept through the attacks, according to authorities. They were on the ground floor, while the 4 victims were on the 2nd and 3rd floors. Police added Tuesday that, quote, the house remains an active crime scene, and said, quote, progress continues to be made in the investigation. Now I have even bigger questions. Why would LE remove the victim's personal belongings from an active crime scene when they have no suspects that have been identified? In the same article, ABC News quoted Moscow Police Chief James Fry as saying, it's time for us to get those things back that really mean something to those families and hopefully help with some of their healing. But yet, it's heartbreaking when you listen to Kaylee Goncalves' parents, and she and he both express that there was no notification of next of kin from the department. In fact, they learned through family, and it was validated through the news. It makes me wonder, was there an ulterior motive as to why the victim's personal items were being removed from the active crime scene before they even had a suspect identified? I returned to Brett Payne's affidavit. Once again, I fell deeper into another rabbit hole. To bring you up to speed, I'm on page 16, where Officer Brent Payne is continuing to provide further analysis of the cellular data of Brian Kohlberger's phone activity. He goes on to say, further analysis of the cellular data provided showed the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th, 2022, consistent with the phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway 195. I took a moment to pause and think about the date, November 13th, 2022, and the early hours that this homicide would have occurred in the AM. Yet, Brett Payne's report goes on to report the times of 12:36 p.m., which is after lunch. He then refers to a time slot of 12:46 p.m., 12:49 p.m., 1:04 p.m., as well as 5:32 and 5:36 p.m. He then says the 8458 phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with the 8458 phone being in the area that the 8458 phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. I'm trying to understand. The crime allegedly took place between 3 and 5 a.m. Mr. Payne lists 12:36 p.m., which is 7 hours later after the crime has occurred. How is Brett Payne associating 7 hours later as immediately following the suspected time of the homicide? My next questions were about the DNA, and I read this article by CBS back in August of 2022. It says, in the hearing, Kohlberger's defense questioned the validity of DNA found on the knife sheath at the crime scene that authorities allege connected him to the 4 murders. Defense attorneys demanded more information from prosecutors about the DNA. Defense attorney Ann Taylor told the judge, they have provided full DNA discovery for the sheath, the knife sheath, but not the other 3 unidentified male DNA samples. Prosecutors countered that they have handed over everything they have. Quote, we have given the defense everything that we have received from the lab. They have asked for DNA workups on other people. To the extent that they don't have them, they weren't done. Latah County prosecuting attorney Bill Thompson said, we can't provide something that doesn't exist. With multiple quadruple victims on separate levels of the home, why would other unknown, unidentified male DNAs not fully be investigated? It makes me wonder, who are they protecting? I had another question. Was touch or transfer DNA reliable evidence of guilt? According to the law office of Philip D. Cabe, the argument is no, and they state, as military defense lawyers, this is our position at a court-martial trial held under the UCMJ. In State v. Terrence Police, 2022, Connecticut, the issue was whether touch DNA was good enough for probable cause to get an arrest warrant. Here's the important part of the decision, saying it wasn't. The report goes on to say, touch DNA does not necessarily indicate a person's direct contact with the object. Rather, according to experts, abandoned skin cells, which make up touch DNA, can be left behind through primary transfer, secondary transfer, or aerosolization. I can't say that word. I fell even deeper into the endless rabbit hole as I reviewed an article from February 26, 2019, in Science News. A long handshake can spread your DNA to objects you didn't touch. A 10-second handshake could transfer a person's DNA to an object that the person never touched. In handshaking experiments, people never picked up a knife became the major source of DNA on the handle about 7% of the time. Forensic scientist Cynthia Keel reported February 21st at the annual meeting of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. That DNA was transferred to the knife when the person's handshaking partner grasped the handle. The article goes on to say, in Reiser's experiment, 4 University of Indianapolis students sat around a table and poured beverages from a communal pitcher. Other students watching the experiment were free to leave the room, talk, and move around to simulate conditions in a restaurant. As each student at the table handled the pitcher and the plastic cup, researchers swabbed the pitcher handle, cups, and students' hands for DNA. DNA from the students at the table was on the pitcher handle and on each other's cups, even though the volunteers handled only their own cup and the pitcher. What's more, DNA from other students in the room showed up too, but none of the observers had touched the students at the table or the pitcher or the cups. Observers' DNA may have spread to the cups and pitcher through the tiny spewed droplets as the onlookers talked, coughed, or sneezed. Looking at the amounts of the DNA left behind on the objects, the researchers couldn't determine who handled the pitcher last, nor could they pinpoint how long the person touched the pitcher or cup. The results demonstrated that DNA can transfer easily in social settings and in unpredictable ways, Reiser said. The more I learned, the weaker the evidence seems against Mr. Kohlberger. The biggest question I guess I'm left with is, if the bad guys and the good guys are both clad in black and fit the same description, would I call the good guys? Or would I wait 8, 9 hours, unsure what to do?